A very warm welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And a big hello to all of our students and our parents out there in the audience. We hope that the next 1 hour will put to rest a lot of the concerns that you have clearly around very big decisions that we have to take regarding your higher education and your careers. So we'll get started. I'd like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Nani, could we start with you, please?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nani Man, and I work with Kaplan. And as Kaplan, we have partnership with various universities across the US. My office is in Delhi, and I've been with Kaplan now for over 12 years. And the partners we work with is the Arizona State University, Pace University, Simmons, and University of Tulsa.
Thank you, Nani. Claire, could you please introduce yourself?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Claire Rawlins. I'm based in London. I also work for Kaplan and work extremely closely with the university portfolio that Nani just mentioned. I've been with Kaplan for over 10 years, and I head up all of our student recruitment functions around the world. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Claire. Ranjana?
Thank you, Radhana. Hi, my name is Ranjita Maitra. I work for the University of New Haven. I'm the country head for the University of New Haven, overlooking all their recruitment activities. I just wanted to add here that I'm new to this field because I was in corporate for last 28 years, and I'm also an alum from the University of New Haven, and I've come back to give something back to my alma mater, and I bring my 28 years of experience, corporate experience working with TCS and Wipro into this. So looking forward to working with, talking to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranjana. Mariam? Mariam, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself, please. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mariama Thomas. I am the representative for Northeastern University in South Asia and Middle East. Northeastern is a leading national research university with our main campus in Boston and other campuses in North Carolina, California, Washington State, as well as in Canada, that is Vancouver and Toronto. And we offer undergraduate, graduate, and PhD programs under 9 different colleges. And the unique educational model of Northeastern is based on a combination of a rigorous academic curriculum with an immersive experiential experience or experiential model. And our experiential learning model is the reason why most of our students choose to come to Northeastern. So look forward to a very good interaction with all of you.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing how the experiential model will be upheld in these challenging times. So wow, in the last 1 week, the world of higher ed has turned topsy-turvy and then back again on its feet. And I'm sure all the folks, all of you guys out there in the higher ed community are like thrilled and heaving a sigh of relief at the ICE regulation being overturned. But of course, it was absolutely uncalled for and created even more chaos in an already challenging time. But I thought the good bit was, all the universities immediately came together to file a lawsuit jointly. And not just that, all of corporate America, all the big tech giants, your Googles and Facebooks, everybody joined that lawsuit, which is such a positive affirmation that, the international students are most welcome on US shores. And despite the temporary ban on H-1Bs, corporate America supports them, endorses them, and recognizes the fact that they have a net positive impact on the economy. And so while we're aware that all of this is a little bit of the roller coaster ride that will continue until the elections in November, but until then, as a higher ed community and as a student community, we all have to brace for these, and who knows what more lies ahead. So we'll take it up one at a time. Nani, I'll start with you again. If you can tell us how are you preparing for the fall 2020 intake? And are you planning for a hybrid model on campus? And then what are you predicting for winter or spring of 2021?
Aradhana, as you rightly said, it's been a roller coaster ride. What was relevant yesterday has become redundant today. I remember when this whole ride started, there were just so many questions that remained unanswered. And fortunately, while we've gone through the last few months, we've been able to find solutions and we've been able to find answers to most of the questions. I won't say that we've got 100% answers today, because again, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But in terms of supporting our students, what we've realized is that getting visas at this stage may not be a possibility with the consulates being shut. So yes, we are prepared. We are offering students the hybrid model, or what we call the sync classroom teaching, supporting the students, where we're encouraging them to start online in August as planned. And then as and when there is an opportunity for them to move to the US, they'll be allowed to do that. So very much gearing up for that. What we've also seen is that there is a large percentage of students who are looking at either deferrals or maybe just putting the plans on hold for a little while now. We're working with those students closely also to see how we can keep them engaged, how we can continue supporting them and ensuring that they are able to reach their dream universities.
Thank you. So Claire, I take from what Nani said that all of your university partners are allowing deferrals for students for at least the fall intake?
Yes, certainly. I think the key for universities all around the world at the moment is that students are able to complete the study plan in the way that works for them. I think there's a lot of concern, particularly about undergraduate students deferring too many times, because we all know that a big study gap isn't often the best thing on a student's educational journey. But universities want to work with each student to find the way that works best for them. And for some students, that is going to be starting in their home country now, and for some students that will be deferring. And where the students want to defer, obviously there's slightly different processes across different courses, different universities, different schools, but we'll be there to support all of them, yes, to find the start date that works best for them.
Okay, and Ranjana, some students are worried that with the high number of students deferring for winter or even fall 2021, there may be a rush for those applying then for our fresh applicants for fall 2021. There'll be limited seats. And so there's some anxiety around that. Would you like to speak towards that?
Okay, Aradhana. First of all, I would like to also state that University of New Haven, which is located in the state of Connecticut in West Haven, we are allowing deferrals, no questions asked for spring as well as for fall. They can defer up to 1 year, no questions asked, with full scholarship, whatever scholarship they've got. So we are honoring the complete scholarship amount. And just a single line email to me or the admission counselor is enough for us to do the deferrals. So that is the first part. So I just wanted to tell the students deferral is not an issue. We are prepared for that. We do know that many students are deferring for spring and for fall. And so we are completely prepared to have classrooms, the hybrid model, the faculty is completely engaged. We have Sama McKee, who's very well known, who's the COVID coordinator, who's ensuring the classrooms are there to ensure that the students, we have 36 square feet of space available to ensure that the students can work, can study in a hybrid model as well. Arad, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Ranjana. Mariam, what is your stance for students who say that they're happy to get quarantined for 2 weeks if consulates open up and if they're willing to fly, and they're very keen and willing to fly to campus for even a mid-semester intake or start? Is that something that you're allowing, and how is the university planning around that? And particularly, addressing concerns around health and logistics and all the travel support that students are going to need at this time. Would you like to speak to that, as well as perhaps any of the other points that were covered, which maybe, from your university's point of view, that you want to add to?
Absolutely. So back in May itself, Northeastern had released a plan for a phased opening of their campuses. And as of now, in the next week, we actually have our College of Health Sciences students going back to the campus. So that is a start. So we expect the process to be spread out over the next few months at least till December, where, in a phased manner, students and employees will be going back to campus. And in order to facilitate that, there is a new testing plan, a COVID-19 testing plan that has also been released, where every person on campus will be tested for COVID-19, and it will be free of charge. And right now we are in the process, or we have applied to be an authorized test center for the COVID-19. We are awaiting government approval for that. So once that is done, we already have the facilities available. We already had the research that was being done at our university research facilities for that. So the university has released the testing plans, and so the fall 2020 classes will start on campus. But it will be taking into account any health or social distancing norms that we will be required to follow without putting any of our employees or our students at risk. So in order to facilitate that, Northeastern has announced something called an NU Flex program, which is a hybrid learning model, where professors deliver lectures or courses in class. There will be some students who are present in class. There will be students logging in remotely. It could be from within the US. It could be from wherever they are in the world. So the class timings are fixed in such a way that there is minimal disruption, or it will be a convenient timing for mostly students in India and China, because they are the farthest from Boston time zone. And also, as and when consulates are reopening, they will be able to apply for their visas and arrive on campus. Hopefully by spring is what we are hoping, because fall we do not have, we are not very positive that international students might be able to arrive, because it's already middle of July, and we know that in India the consulates have not opened, in China the consulates have not opened, international flights haven't resumed. So it's not just about the campuses reopening for international students. It's also about other, them being able to get a visa, them being able to travel to the US, if required, them being undergoing quarantine before they can start their classes. So students have the option to start the classes on a hybrid variety, or if they are in their home countries, they can start taking classes under NU Flex online. Most of them are synchronized classes, where they will be participating in the class along with other classmates from the US as well as from other different parts of the country, and along with the faculty. So it will be more interactive rather than listening to a recorded session of a lecture. But if for some reason they are not able to attend the synchronized classes, there will be arrangements made so that they are able to listen to the recorded lectures as well.
Sure, thanks.
I wanted to add to your question about the quarantine. What you said was that students want to know is if quarantine is a possibility. So for Arizona State University, like the universities and our panelists here, we've also got similar plans in place, where the idea is that we could have maybe a hall of residence or a hotel converted into a quarantine block, and look at students arriving, who could be safely taken there, go through their quarantine, and then move ahead with whatever the model of learning and teaching is, which is the ASU Sync, the hybrid model, of course, where you attend classes on alternate days and you take your Zoom sessions, etc., and maintaining, of course, all the social distancing. So I think that's something that all universities across the US are taking into consideration, because what you cannot afford to have is another health risk.
Yeah, yeah. Are your various departments advising their students on what courses to take for this fall, so that they save the courses which will need more of an in-person interaction for the next semester? Are you advising students and working with students on course selection as well? For, this question's open for anybody who wants to answer that.
Yes.
I think all students, sorry.
Go ahead, Claire.
So I think all students will work with their advisor to look at which courses, and I think this is probably common actually, to look at which courses are most relevant for them now, and to really get the best courses, the most suited courses. But I also think the key here is that universities have done an amazing job in adapting the curricula. So that I think people will be quite blown away by what can be achieved in the new ways of teaching. So the most important thing I think is for the student to stay on their study track and focus and take the advice given by their advisors of which modules, which courses are the right ones for them ultimately for their degree, and not to go in with preconceptions of, oh, I want to, this will work better online than this one. Talk with your advisor, you know, they will have that really good advice to get you those right modules.
Yeah, I also wanted to, sorry, Granjana, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I totally endorse what Claire is saying. You know, the students who went in fall, after 2 months, you know, they went online and they're so happy. I have a whole panel of students who came and spoke someplace, and they said they're so happy with the online classes that are happening. And faculty is working completely to have the complete fall semester ready. And they will work with the students to see that which classes work. You know, for online, you know, obviously a lab class is not going to be taken online, which they will, you know, defer it for when they come. It's a hybrid class. Thank you, Aradhana.
Thanks, Ranjana. There's also concern, you know, with students clearly because everybody expects or believes that an online semester should be priced lower or the fee should be reduced. So have your universities reduced the fee? And if they haven't, then would you like to address students' concerns around why and the rationale that universities have for not being able to reduce the fee?
I can take that up, Aradhana. And, you know, I spoke to the professors, and believe me, they have to work twice as hard, you know, to do a course through Zoom or through some Blackboard or some other thing to ensure that each student is able to grasp what's happening in the class. And they also have one-on-one sessions sometimes with the students later on to ensure that all the questions are answered, which they didn't have to do in a normal classroom. They come and teach and they go away. You know, they're, you know, finished. You know, if they want, they can do that. The onus is much more on the professor right now to ensure that the students understand, they're able to grasp, they're able to comprehend and do all that. So I think it's a little unfair to expect that that the professors not taking a cut in his salary. They have taken, some of the professors have taken a cut in their salary in these you know, in these troubled times. But you know, to expect a cut in reduction in fees, I think is a little bit of an unfair ask, if from my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, to echo what Ranjana has said, yes, the rigor of the curriculum still remains the same. It's just the delivery modality that is different. So the effort that the professors or the faculty members put in is actually more than what they would have to do in an in-person model of teaching. So, and also the class experience, all the knowledge or the number of credits that the students are gaining is the same as what they would be on ground. So yes, at Northeastern also we don't have a differential tuition for online. It's the same as what they would be paying for an on-ground program.
Sure.
Same for us, Aradhana.
Yeah, Nani.
For us, we haven't had any reduction in the cost of tuition because the quality is not being compromised in any way.
Correct.
Yeah. Some of our students are also worried that if they take fall, you know, especially the incoming students, the freshmen, that if they take the fall semester online and they don't get their visa acceptance when spring comes around and everything's back to normal and consulates open up. And while I know that no university can give an assurance, but would you like to be, you know, address that concern for the students? Because that's, I know, holding some of them back.
I can take that. See, my standard sort of a response to a lot of students and what my experience tells me is whenever you go for your visa appointment, the commission or the consulate, your entry clearance officer, what he's looking at is two aspects. One is your intention and the other one is your finances. Finances are always very easy to demonstrate. Well, I have an FD, I have a loan, etc., etc. So that's taken care of. What is always difficult to establish is your intent, right? And here, if you've started your classes online, what you've demonstrated very clearly is that you are serious. You have decided to start with your classes because you were committed. What more proof of intention can you offer someone? So I don't see that, again, as you said, of course, that there is no guarantee of a visa ever. It's not something we have control over. But if you are able to establish that you're a genuine student and your real reason of going to the US or anywhere, any other destination is studies and the knowledge that you want to gain. So I don't see that happening. Is there a refund? No, there is not a refund, because what is happening is that you've already taken those classes. I would advise you to maybe appear for a visa again, reappear if that is an option, or you could even decide to drop that particular semester, look at a later one. If that doesn't work for you, all these credits that you've taken are going to be transferable. Is that something else that you want to, maybe you want to apply to another university after that also?
Yeah, thank you, Nani.
I totally agree with what Nani has said. And to add to what she has said, that, if you're taking online, the intent is so clear, when you're going for a visa interview. And secondly, you're also saving on living costs, the time that you're taking in fall. Otherwise, you would have been sitting and, paying for the living costs, for your health insurance costs. You're also, and you're getting that immersive experience, right, sitting from your home country and getting into the entire thing. When you come, you're already feeling a part of the entire university overview, once you come there. Thanks, Aradhana.
Some students are also worried that, they were looking forward to bank loans to finance the cost of their education, and often the bank only disburses the amount once they have a visa in hand. And since, the possibility of getting a visa right now is next to nil, they may not be able to finance the cost of their tuition for this upcoming semester, especially our freshman students. Any responses or thoughts on that?
Yes, I can take that. Aradhana, again, what we've seen is if an undergraduate student is looking at studying overseas, most times the finances of the family are a little different. He's not a self-funded student in the sense that it's the family that's paying for his studies, right? And generally someone who can think of studying overseas for 4 years is in a position actually to at least look at paying maybe the first semester fees from their own resources. Is the graduate students more and more who are looking at education loans where this could be a problem. We have come across students who've raised this with us, and for them, I think the decision has been to defer and start later on. Some students, the graduate students I've spoken with, have said that they're willing to pay for the first semester fee from their own personal savings as well, and then look at how they can sort of strike a deal with the bank and look at different policies of disbursement maybe.
And I also know from our own sources that the banks too are being flexible on this.
Absolutely.
The private banks, they're doing all that they can to accommodate this, given that there's enough ability, enough of a credit track record for that student. The other concern that our students have is, if they take this semester or even the next semester online, how will their OPT and CPT status be affected? Will they be able to get a summer internship? What are the regulations around that? Because that's a really big part of a US higher education experience.
Yes. Yes, Aradhana. See, many universities have CPT, like University of New Haven has a CPT, but you have to be 9 months in the United States, as the law states. It is only getting deferred if you're not there, but it is not getting cancelled. So it might get you might do it a little later, but it is not getting cancelled under any circumstances. And OPT, if you're doing a STEM program, it still stays, or if you're doing an OPT normal, it still stays for 12 months. The STEM program for 36 months, it still stays. So I don't think it should be a concern for students.
And what about some internships?
Internships, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead, Anjana. Yours.
Aradhana, what was the next question?
Internships
is, we have graduate assistantships in the university which they can apply for, and we also have tuition waivers from 10 to 50% depending on the merit of the student when they apply.
Ratna, what I wanted to say was that if you start off with the sync model, which is the hybrid model, in that case you are treated at par and as a F1 visa, and there is no change in your OPT or CPT, right? And if you start in fall, for example, and you're able to reach there by October or November, like the start dates we have, late start dates, etc. In that case, your OPT, CPT is not getting impacted at all. But otherwise, yes, you need to be on American soil for 9 months before you are able to apply for your CPT.
Okay, thank you. Again, you know, with the temporary ban on H-1B, everyone's concerned about what the career opportunities really will look like for them post the pandemic going away. Can you speak to that? Why should a student still uphold the American dream and come to the US?
I think one thing that we're certainly seeing as a result of this pandemic is a massive increase in jobs in the tech field. And we know that a lot of Indian students do study in those fields. If we look, for example, at ASU, Zoom has just opened a new headquarters in Phoenix. So whilst unemployment in the US is at an all-time high, a lot of those jobs are unskilled jobs, the jobs that are taken away by quarantine, by people staying at home more. And they're not as affected at the high end, at the highly skilled end, where a lot of our students specialize. So I think we will certainly see far, far more jobs over the next few years in that high-end tech sector. And you know, international students are very well placed for those positions.
That's certainly very reassuring for our students to hear.
Yes, Aradhana, if I can add, you know, there'll be a huge increase in public health, biomedical engineering, data science, computer science, business analytics, data analytics. All these fields will see a huge increase in jobs, you know, going forward. So I just wanted to reassure the students.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that the panelists would like to add before we start taking up questions which our audience has been sending our way? Okay, so then I'll take up the first few questions. I think someone wants to know that is it better to opt for fall 2021 or spring 2022? If fall 2021 is a better choice, by when should I finish taking the GRE and IELTS TOEFL test this year?
I think that's going to be different for every student. You know, it's really going to depend on your personal circumstances. I think my personal advice would be having a gap, not doing anything isn't the best thing to be doing. So, you know, start your studies, get engaged, but everyone's circumstances are going to be slightly different. So talk to your educational counselor, you know, and look at what's best for you.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of questions and differently worded which are coming on the admissions requirements. So what are they like? Is there going to be a relaxation? Are the tests going to be made mandatory again for fall 2021? So could anyone answer that for both the master's and undergrad program?
I'll take that. So at Northeastern, at the undergraduate level for freshmen, SAT or ACT is not required for international students. It's a requirement only for domestic students. That does not mean that admission is any easier. It's pretty competitive. At the graduate level, most of the programs have waived off the standardized test requirement for next year, that is spring 2021 as well as fall 2021. Since you know, Northeastern has a very decentralized admission system, each department can set their own requirements. So you have to look at the particular program that you are interested in to see whether it is test optional. But one thing you have to remember is TOEFL or IELTS or the English proof of English proficiency is required no matter what. As long as you are an international student, you are required to submit TOEFL or IELTS, but GRE or GMAT is waived based on different programs. For most programs, it is waived for spring 2021 as well as for fall 2021 to make it easier for the applicants. You know, the university or the higher education community itself, we understand that it's much more challenging for them to prepare and take the exams, especially since their academic calendar has also gone for a toss. Their final exams are not over, the classes are still continuing, taking into account all those things.
Mariam, but what is your advice to students while the university certainly made it optional? Would you still recommend that if a student is able to take these tests, they should still go ahead and take it because it may help their chances of an admit or scholarship or visa for sure?
Absolutely. So if students can take these tests, even if it's waived, it will definitely be a good addition to their profile. And especially if they feel like there is any particular deficiency in their overall profile, because as you know, at any university, a profile is given a holistic review rather than taking into account one or two aspects of the application. So if you can, by all means, please take the test, and because that will definitely give you a competitive advantage, especially applying to very highly competitive programs. Like at Northeastern, I could give you an example. Our MBA program is very competitive. So even though it's not mandatory, the business school is recommending that students, whoever can take it, must take it to make their profile a little stronger. So yes, if possible, it's always better to take the test, because that always makes the profile a little stronger than otherwise.
Aradhana, what has not changed is the GPA requirements, right?
Yeah.
The optional testing may differ, and that is also because the situation this time was completely unprecedented, and taking these tests was not a possibility at all. But what we're also seeing is a lot of US universities are rethinking the whole standardized tests requirements. A lot of universities are looking at results and trying to find a correlation between GRE scores and success within a classroom, for example. And what we've noticed is more and more universities are waiving off these requirements even as it is. I don't know if that's going to be something that all universities will go ahead for or not. But what we have done is that for now, there was very limited programs for which there is a GRE waiver, but that was only for fall 2020. Going ahead, let's watch the space for more.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think Nani has a question very specifically for
Aradhana, I'll just add for the GRE requirements for University of New Haven. For School of Engineering and School of Business, we have waived off GRE for fall 2020 and spring 2021. We have also added Duolingo as a test option for proficiency in English, and the minimum requirement is 105. Thank you. Over to you, Aradhana.
Thanks, Ranjana. Nani, one of the students wants you to repeat what you said for CPT when classes are in sync.
What I said was that if students start online now in August, and if they opt for, if it's an undergrad student, he needs to register for 12 classes to be considered as a F1 full-time, sort of to maintain his status, so to say. And out of those, he's got to take 9 credits, which need to be in the sync model, and 3 could be I courses, or they could all be the sync credits. If he does that and he's able to reach the university by October or November, in that case, the CPT is not getting effect. That is what I'd said, that it's equivalent to being on ground and attending face-to-face classes.
Great, that's very reassuring for students. Okay, I think students want this to be repeated again. And the specific question is, with the number of people deferring to fall 2021 for masters, how much harder is it going to be for students applying in fall 2021? And are the universities going to have the usual intake or a largely reduced intake? I know that Ranjana did respond to this when she spoke, but I think it'll help if Nani, you and Mariam could also address that since it's come up again.
Okay, I'll go first. This is, as of now, fall 2021 is a little, we have not even opened the applications for fall 2021 yet. So it is a little premature for me to comment on that, but this is something that universities are aware of. With the number of deferral requests that are coming our way, we know that yes, there is going to be the number of applications for fall 2021 is going to be more. And I am sure accommodations will be made to take care of this challenge that we already foresee. But as of now, I do not have a yes or no answer to give to this. I'm sorry.
Nani?
If you have an offer now, and if you think that fall 2021 is going to be extremely competitive, so I would advise students not to withdraw right now. They should continue with either a deferral possible, wherever there's like a double deferral possible. Do that. Secure your spot. For some of our programs at ASU, we do not allow double deferrals. We would be allowing only one up to spring, and after that you need to make a new application. So as Mariama said, I think universities will be able to make more places available, but hard to say exactly what's going to pan out for that. We've started accepting applications for fall.
For fall 21, yes. There's
Yeah.
a lot of anxiety around that. So I think, Nani, for what you're saying, that if you were an incoming freshman for fall 2020, certainly defer. But I think the concern is more about those who were going to be freshmen in fall 2021, and they're worried. What are their chances given that the number of seats may be reduced? So I guess what we're hearing from our panelists is that the universities will do all they can to accommodate those students, and you needn't worry, but it's too early to give any specifics. But that application is already open for fall 2021, so students don't wait, go for it, right?
Yes.
Yes, and the universities are waiting to welcome you back on campus as soon as they possibly can, regardless of whichever intake. So I don't think one needs to worry, one needs to just have the faith and go for it. Okay, another question. What are the differences between spring and fall intake in terms of RA/TA opportunities, summer internship, visa requirements? So I think students want to know which intake is better. Is there a difference, if at all? And also specifically, what are the requirements to be eligible for an RA-ship or TA-ship or a scholarship, any of these?
Okay, I'll just take that. For University of New Haven, every applicant is reviewed for scholarship based on merit. So it's not on a single parameter, it's looked at it holistically, and we give scholarships of tuition waiver from 10 to 50%, 50%. So you come to know whether you've got a scholarship right at the time of your admission. That's one part. And for graduate assistantships and on-campus jobs, once you come on campus, you can apply for the on-campus jobs, and you can get an on-campus jobs, which are quite easily available. Talking about Aradhana, what she said, I think this time the spring is going to be the new fall. So it's going to be the new normal. So spring is going to be the new fall, and that's what we are looking forward to.
And Rajan, a question related to that as well, that will the same courses be offered in spring that are offered in fall? Because otherwise...
Yes, it will be. It will be, absolutely.
For us, that's not happening for us, because some of our courses at ASU, which are under the business school, for example, are not offered in spring. So we will not be able to, students with current offers will have to defer to fall 21 for that. Some programs do not have a spring intake.
Okay. Okay. There's another specific question which says that if I'm in my pre-final year and I was applying for fall 2021, you need 6 semesters of marks. With this semester having gone down the drain, what is their advice? What is your advice, and how university is going to accommodate that?
When you say it's gone down the drain, I understand you haven't probably been able to perform to what you wanted to. The fact is that there is a certain average that is being taken. You will still get a pass or an average or an aggregate, right? So there is a result available for that. It may not be as high as you expected it to be, but there is a result. You have a pass or a fail. So that shouldn't really impact anything. Send us whatever your university gives you for your 6th semester.
Okay. And will the online enrollment option be available for PhD students as well, or just for undergrad and master's students?
I would not be able to talk about that. Maybe this is something that if you've already been talking to an advisor for your PhD, they should be able to help you with a question like that. Because as it is, PhDs don't really always have start dates, right? So even if you were to arrive a little later, I'm sure that would be okay. But that's again something for you to take up with your guide.
Yeah, okay. Also, students want to know, is there any advantage in applying early, or is the same weightage given to all applicants who apply even until the last date of the deadline?
I think it helps to apply early. It does help, but of course, the faculty does not discriminate on any application, but I think it does help to apply early. Yeah, Mariama, go ahead.
And also to add to that, it also depends how your particular program reviews applications. It could be on a rolling basis, or it could be they will do one or two committee reviews after the deadline. So that is also a factor to know if it's on a rolling basis. It's always better to apply early. I think in any case, I think it's always better to apply early, because that shows that you started your preparation early, you did what you're supposed to do early enough, and you are ready with your application early on in the application cycle. So that shows that you are, a good student, that you have done your planning, that you have done your homework. So that will definitely give you an advantage when the committee is reviewing your application. So yes, early application is always highly recommended. Don't wait till the last minute.
So lots of questions are around the application process. So what's the weightage given to the GRE, and do you need 16 years of education, or if someone has an undergraduate degree which was of 3 years, are they eligible? And then for undergrad for fall 2021, will the admission process be postponed in terms of the deadlines, given the unprecedented and uncertain situation?
For the 16 years of education for University of New Haven, we do take people with 15 years of education only if it is from a NAC A and above institute. So if it's from a NAC A and above institute, we will accept applications with 15 years of education. Otherwise, they will have to do 1 more year of education to, apply. What was the second question? What was the second question? Sorry.
Is that what's the weightage for the GRE?
Yeah, so it again differs from program to program. For example, for very competitive programs like computer science and data science, GRE is given more weightage, the quants are given more weightage. But for others, we look at a very holistic, the faculty looks at a very holistic way of looking at applications. For some of the programs, GRE is also not mandatory, though it's optional. You can give you a GRE. But some programs need a GRE score. So one can go and look at the website and check out which is required. Most of the engineering programs require a GRE score.
And what kind of flexibility are you making for fall 2021 applicants in terms of deadlines being extended or relaxation in requirements? And what would be the quantum of scholarships available for that intake given COVID-19? Will the quantum of scholarships be reduced?
Quantum of scholarships are not going to be reduced. We will have the same quantum of scholarships. That is, of course, not going to be reduced. But relaxations, we have still not come out with a plan for fall 2021. We are still, doing for spring and fall 2020 right now. So,
Aradhana, I wanted to answer the question about 16 years of education. For Arizona State University, if you're applying to any of the programs, 16 years of education is mandatory. Other than Thunderbird School of Management, where we would be able to accept 15 years. If I talk about my other partner, which is Pace University, here, if you have 15 years of education, Pace would accept you. For certain programs, in addition to your 15 years, you may need an additional GRE or a GMAT score as well. But Pace is more relaxed in terms of accepting 15 years of education. And your question about scholarships, I don't see the pot of scholarship becoming smaller for next year. And in fact, for those students, they are of course writing to the advisors, letting them know about deferrals. The amount of scholarship that they've been awarded now is being carried forward in most cases. But again, I'm not giving a blanket sort of a rule there and saying, yes, it will happen. You need to get in touch with your advisors and speak with them about about carrying forward your scholarship as well. And for new students, we will have scholarships available.
Great, that's very reassuring for our students. Our students are also asking, what is the advice that the panelists have for the students with respect to what they should do in this time period if they're deferring? What would look good or in terms of their visa applicant, when they apply for a visa, as to what they did with their time, or if they're reapplying, what is their advice on how to use this time most effectively to help strengthen their application?
I'll take that. So what is most important is not to have a gap where you are not doing anything. Do something that is related. It could be an internship, it could be a volunteer work that you are doing, but do something in your field of study, or in your preferred or the field of study that you are opting at the US university. Keep yourself engaged so that there isn't a period in your career where you are just sitting around doing nothing.
Absolutely. Regardless, I think time is our most precious resource, and it's all about continual learning. So, at any stage.
A lot of the students, especially the graduate students, are engineering or computer sciences, etc. Right? So there is just such a lot of choice available if you wanted to do additional online programs as well. Do something like that. Some of the graduates, I know, if you're a working professional, obviously you're looking at continuing with your work as well for another year before you decide to go. But for us working from home as well, aren't we using this time to gain more skills, where we're saying that, okay, let me see if I can pick up something like a weekend program. So the idea is to utilize your time to the best possible way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think students also want to know that even post the pandemic, what are the educators envisaging for the method of teaching or delivery of, content and curricula? Is there going to be a permanent change now in how higher education is going to be delivered?
It's going to change, definitely. Considering that we don't really have too many updates on what's going to happen with the COVID situation. Is there a vaccine coming? When is it happening? Do we have a cure for it? We don't know. So I would say that hybrid seems to be the way to go, and it's here to stay for a little while, of course. What we're also seeing is big companies, maybe Google, speaking with universities and trying to see how they can deliver their programs over a different platform. So going forward, I see technology becoming a very important part, and we will probably be looking at the hybrid model. Again, even with the COVID situation, even if you were face-to-face, social distancing is still going to be in place for a while. So for your health and safety reasons also, hybrid probably again is what you'll see more and more.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Nani. One of our students wants to know, what are the main things that universities look for in an application for a master's in computer sciences and data analytics?
They look at a holistic view, Aradhana. So right from your GPA, right from the school from which you have passed out, to your letters of recommendation, to your SOP, to your GRE score, to your IELTS score. In University of New Haven, it's looked at the complete package. But your GPA, I've seen the faculty when I speak to them, your GPA, your institute, and if you have taken a GRE, it plays a major role in the computer science or data science programs.
Ranjana, I also wanted to add that I think the most overlooked component of an application is the statement of purpose.
Yes, SOP. Yeah,
for some reason, don't seem to pay enough, don't seem to emphasize enough on that. What you will see very typically when you look at these SOPs is very generic, one size fits all, which can get quite boring, to be honest. When I speak with professors, they say that we don't want to know why you became an engineer. And the most often statements of purpose you see is, oh, when I was a child, I saw a clock that was broken and I put it together and I said, oh, I'm meant to be an engineer, kind of a thing. That is not what they want. What they want to see is, what is it that you've come prepared for? How do you think this curriculum is going to shape your future? How do you correlate it? So do some time and prepare your SOP well. And please be very careful about the plagiarism bit. It's really disheartening at times to see statements of purpose which have been copied from here and there. We all do our Turnitins. There are ways to find out that it's been plagiarized. Why are you risking it? So I keep emphasizing with the students that a lot of the decision making depends on your SOP. So please keep it relevant. Your GPAs are extremely important. Yes, your GRE score is very important. But are you able to convey why you want to do a particular program? Are you the right fit for the program? So that is very essential too.
Absolutely. Nani, I think put it very well, the SOP part. And the other thing I would like to add, which Indian students sometimes don't get it, is the number of backlogs. I think the US faculty, especially in the University of New Haven, pay a lot of attention to the backlogs. You might have a great GRE score, but if you had a lot of fails, they take a little stronger view of that. So just wanted to say that as well.
Absolutely. Our students are also concerned that what will the pay scales look like post-COVID in the US?
Well, to do crystal ball gazing, Nani, go ahead, please.
No, I was saying that very recently, I think there was an article by the Washington Post that spoke about some $2.3 trillion being pumped into the economy to make sure that the economy is, you know, there's a pump into it. I know of students who've been able to secure really good jobs, well-paying jobs. Again, crystal ball, where is it?
Yes.
Remains to be seen. I wish I could answer that.
Yeah, just to add to what Nani has said, these are all qualified students with a bachelor's or a master's. So I don't believe the pay scale is just going to go down because a bachelor's degree or master's degree holds its own value in the US.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, one of our audience members would like to know about the medical facility measures universities are planning to take for the upcoming intakes. Parents are worried.
Okay, I'll take that. We are having a host of things that we are doing. The state of Connecticut has one of the lowest COVID rates, you know, in the country, actually. Of course, it's a small state, but the governor has been very efficient in curtailing the rates. So we have a COVID coordinator, Summer McKee. You can, Google her. She has been on, I think, 500 news channels and news posts in the last 3 months. She's a public health administrator and what else. So we are having from everything, every student will be taken a COVID test. They will be given masks, they will have thermometers, they will be having thermal screenings done. There'll be 36 square feet of space. That's the state law which is given. So if any of you want to get more details, you can come to me. I have a whole list of what are the do's and don'ts that's going to happen on campus. It's really, really very exhaustive, a little daunting. And wherever there are high traffic areas, there'll be more sort of screening going around that. So parents should not be worried. I think you're well covered over there.
Yeah, just to add, yes, all universities, I think they are aware of the risk and they are doing everything in their power to make sure that the students are safe as well as the employees are safe. And as far as Northeastern is concerned, they have come out with a COVID-19 testing plan where each student, each employee on campus who's coming back to campus will be tested free of cost. And, there will be periodic testing that will be done for everybody on campus. There will be social distancing norms that are followed. In the dormitories, there will be there won't be too many people, there won't be more than 2 students in one room. So all those accommodations that are being made as a safety precaution.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayama.
I wanted to add there, Aradhana, about what's also happening is that these kits that are being given out to students, your sanitizers, etc., a lot of money being spent in making sure that your classrooms are sanitized regularly. When it comes to the dining, pre-packed disposable utensils available, touchless payments, physical distancing in lines, plexiguard sort of barriers, extended hours being implemented, increased frequency of cleaning. So there's a lot that's happening there, and that should reassure parents that health and safety is going to be a very important part of whatever a university is, there for.
Yeah. It is reassuring for sure. couple last questions because we're running out of time. A student wants to know, what is the weightage given to extracurricular activities in their profile?
If you're coming on for an undergraduate program as a freshman, yes, it's very refreshing to see someone who's done a lot more outside the classroom as well. It also depends upon the kind of program that you're coming for. If you're coming anything related to maybe health sciences and you're looking at a medicine degree in future, etc., the kind of volunteer work that you've done comes in very handy. Obviously, everyone wants to see whether you've just been like a bookworm with just your academic sort of interests, or there are other things that you've done as well. So a well-rounded personality is something that undergraduate admissions advisors look at. I don't think it's got the same weightage if you come for your graduation. So I would differentiate it between these two. Yes, it's important more because we know the kind of personality you are, and it gives you more opportunity to blossom when you're in a university.
Thank you, Rani. If a student is selected for teaching assistantship, how much can they earn per hour and how many hours are they able to work per week?
Take that. They can work for 20 hours in a week. And again, how much will be paid? It depends on the program, on the particular department where they are working, and how many hours also. For a student who is on an F1 visa, they can work for 20 hours a week, but the department may give a TA only for 10 hours. So if that's the case, they will be allowed to work for another 10 hours somewhere else. So again, it depends on the department and the kind of TA that is offered, whether it's a pay or the number of hours. But the maximum number of hours they'll be working is 20 hours in a week.
Okay. And looking at the current pandemic and the job opportunities for the future, which would be a better course for a master's? Business analytics, data sciences, or management information systems in terms of opportunities?
All three. Business analytics, data science, all of them have extremely good opportunities. And I've seen people getting internships even during the pandemic, the current students, even computer science.
Ranjana, I think a lot of times when students ask us these questions, even at fairs, etc., I find it very difficult to answer that when they come and ask you, what is the best course?
Yeah, I understand.
And your answer there is, well, I have no idea about your interests. I really don't know what you think your skill sets. What is the kind of career path that you've chosen for yourself? Are you going in for a program because it has more opportunity in the future? Or is it something that I'm passionately driven towards, and this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to make a difference? So I think a match of this is extremely important. You need to figure out as a student, what is it that you want to do? What are your skill sets? Where do you think you excel as well? The opportunities will happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
I mean, this is not about, what was that movie, The Three Idiots? No, I'm not saying that.
Well said, Nani.
Mariama, you wanted to add?
Yeah, just to add to that, this pandemic, or this is something, it's happening just now. This should not be a reason to choose a major. The major that you choose is something that you will be working on in for the next 30, maybe 40 years of your life. So you choose wisely based, looking at the big picture rather than the next 2 years.
Super, absolutely. Absolutely. I think with that, we've run out of time, and I want to thank our panelists and also just summarize for our students and parent community out there. The pandemic is a reality today, but there will be a time where it will be a distant memory. And the horizon that we're looking at is long, 2 years and 4 years before we graduate, and much is going to change. The universities love us, they welcome us, all of our international students, and they're there to look after us and ensure our well-being, so we needn't worry. As soon as the consulates open, we can line up for the visa interviews and then hopefully make it back on campus. Until then, the universities are there to support us in every possible way. Everybody's extending all kinds of flexibility, all universities are certainly encouraging their students to the extent possible to start their education online itself. And if not, then at least secure your place, secure your seat with a deferral, and stay in touch with your individual departments and or universities by being in touch with your advisors and your websites, right? And nothing else changes. Hang in there, stay safe, and stay calm. Keep calm and stay safe, I think, is the mantra for everybody without panicking too much.
Just one sort of parting bits of wisdom. The ASU president, President Crow, said, "We are not in a storm. It's a new climate. Let's work."
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Nani. I think that was well said as a parting remark. And thank you to all of you for taking out the time to speak to our students today.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for having us.
Thank you.